Hey everyone, in today's video, I want to share with you how I think we can improve the grading system for teachers that will ultimately lead to success for the students in your classroom. In a traditional grading system, students earn points on assignments, and I was finding that students got really good at playing the game of school to get the points that they needed to get that A. And ultimately, I knew students were not learning the material, rather, they were just getting points to get a good grade. This really prompted me to rethink my own grading system, as I want my students to be learning something from my course. And I want them to not only learn it when there's a test, but I really want them to learn it so when they move past my course, they still retain that knowledge. So let me share with you today how I think we can modify, improve that grading system for teachers to ultimately lead to the most successful students in your classroom. The problem with the current teacher grading system is that it really focuses on points for assignments. So traditionally, a grading system would be every assignment is allotted some number of points, maybe 100 points, maybe 10 points, maybe 30 points, depending on how much you want to weight the assignment. And a student's grade is determined by how many points did they earn out of that allotted number of points. And you can convert that very easily into a percentage, or if you grade strictly on points, the number of points they've earned will add up over time throughout the class. How many points did they earn across the whole class out of the total allotment of points allowed in the course? So this is the system I grew up seeing as a student. So as a teacher, that was the system I was familiar and comfortable with using. So I, of course, started to implement a points-based system. And in my first couple years of teaching, I knew that this system was not going to work for me. When it came to coming up with assessments, I first off had to decide what point value to give this assessment. And so if it was a test, well, I got to give it out of 100 points. So then it became the challenge of how many points do I make each question to fit that 100-point assessment. So I might make an open-ended question worth 10 points, a multiple choice worth only 2 points, and now I need to add questions to get myself up to that 100-point value. And I felt like I was just arbitrarily giving these point values out. Was that open-ended question really worth more importance over that multiple choice question? I don't know. It seems like it should be because that's what I'm used to. And when it came time to actually grading these assessments, if that was a 10-point question, and I don't think the student really fully explained it, do they get -1 point? Do they get -2 points? Half credit? Coming up with those point values seemed like a joke. I had no idea what I was doing. I was arbitrarily assigning these values, and I didn't feel like the system was working. It led to me having way more stress when it came to grading than anything. And as teachers, that's the last thing we need, is to have one more thing stressing us out and on our plate to deal with. So I knew I wanted to change something in terms of how I graded, but I didn't know what. So fast forward a few years ago, we had a new assistant principal come in, and he came from a place where they were implementing a more standards-based grading approach. And he started presenting on it and just talking about the conversation around what should a grade mean, how should we assess students. And it really led me to follow down this path of standards-based grading after researching more about it. The idea behind standards-based grading is that your grades are tied to assessments of standards rather than assignments. So you specifically want to design an assessment around 1 or 2 standards at a time, and the grade is per standard. And the idea is that you'll give multiple attempts throughout the year, throughout a grading period, for a student to show or demonstrate mastery on those particular standards. So instead of grading on this massive 100-point scale, you boil down the grading scale to a much smaller scale where there's a lot less room for error. And it allows students to clearly see which standards they need to learn, or which ones they might need more work on, and which ones they have mastered. Grading with this sort of system allows the grades to truly reflect what a student knows, has learned, what they are able to do, rather than just earning points to get a good grade. And ultimately, what we want as teachers is for students to learn. So by switching up grading systems, we can improve the grading process so that students become more focused on learning than over a number or a grade. So then how do we come up with an easy grading system that teachers can be using that helps students ultimately learn in the classroom? The first step involves shrinking your grading scale from a 100-point system down to a much smaller scale like a 4-point system. You need to find a grading scale that works for you. I personally like the 4-point mastery scale. I've seen 5-point ones out there and so on, but in essence, the smaller grading scale means you're breaking grades down into 4 categories. A level 4 score would be a student has mastered the standard, meaning they've gone above and beyond what was expected of them, or they've demonstrated a skill or a concept in a new, creative way. They really show you what you know. They're showing you that they're an expert. A level 3 score would be they've met the standard. They can do what was expected of them. They get most questions right. They get a few things wrong here and there. They can tell you what the right answer is, but maybe not why that's the right answer. So that distinguishes that mastering level from the meeting level. Then you have a level 2 score, which is a student is approaching the standard, meaning they get some things right. There's a lot of room left to learn, like there's a lot of room for improvement. They haven't quite met all expectations. There's still room for improvement. A level 1 is that the student is not there yet. Emphasis on the yet. And so the student has attempted to show mastery, but they really have missed the mark. They haven't really demonstrated an understanding. And then you could even go as far as saying a level 0, which is the student didn't even attempt. So by boiling down the grading scale from this large 100-point scale down to a 4-point scale, you then don't have those issues with students coming up to you and say, why did I earn a 96, not a 98? And say like, oh, well, why'd you take 1 point off here on this assignment for this person, but 2 points off for me? Like those conversations go away and you have much better conversations about what the grade is and how a student can get better. If you're telling a student they've met the standard and they really want to be at that mastering level, then you can have clear conversations with the student. This is what you need to do to improve. This is what you need to do to learn. Another major way to really improve the grading system is that you take behavior out of grades. So as teachers, we want to communicate to students, to parents, that students aren't completing their work. And a big chunk of that is grading things late, meaning we take points off for late work, or we grade things on completion, so we give it like 10 out of 10 points. And if we're doing this over and over and over again, the students that comply and submit the work that they need to, their grades will be inflated. They're constantly getting that 10 out of 10 score. Whereas the students that struggle to do any work at home or struggle to complete work for a myriad of reasons, they often are negatively affected by this grading system. Even though they might know their stuff, that their grades start to go down because they're just not complying and not submitting work. So a big area of improvement in the grading system is take that behavior out. So you can grade things for completion, but don't assign point values associated with it. So in my classroom, we call any sort of classwork, homework sort of activity, we call it a task. And so tasks are graded using words, not numbers. So in the gradebook, there is no numerical value associated with a task. All students are going to see are words to indicate that they completed it. So if there was a classwork activity or a homework activity that a student should be doing to practice their mastery, then they will see the word done in their gradebook if they fully completed it. They will see the word missing if they were there, they should have done it, and they did not turn it in. They'll see the word incomplete. If they were there, they started it but didn't finish it, or they turned something in and you clearly know that they could have written more detailed explanations, or they didn't answer every single question. And then we use the word absent to indicate that the student missed that day of class and that work is missing. So by using words, you're still communicating with the student and the parents at home how a student is completing their work, but it doesn't have a numerical value attached to it to either inflate or deflate someone's grade. And often that completion is really what makes a grade not reflect a student's true understanding of content. And so this has really changed the game of grading for me, and I really think it has improved it because you can have really good conversations with students. If a student has not submitted any of their tasks and a lot of things say missing, usually these are the students that are in that approaching area of mastery. So it's really going to be hard for a student to meet or master a standard if they're not doing the practice work that I'm giving them in class or for homework. Whereas on the other hand, you might have a student that's just completing everything. They're more likely to be the student that is meeting and mastering the standards. So you have much better conversations around their grades and what a student needs to be doing to improve based on the completion of those tasks. And the fact that they don't impact their numerical grade, it really can help a student out. If they're not getting their work done, they still have a chance to come back from it. It's not this sentence of they have all these zeros in the grade book and now they have to overcome that by doing really well for the rest of the year. Another major room for improvement in the grading system would be using rubrics for grading. So traditionally we think of using a rubric when it comes to a project, and you have your different categories outlined. So it would fall pretty much in line with standards-based grading, where you have they've mastered the expectation, they've met it, they're approaching it, they're not there yet. And then you have all the different grading criteria. Well, you can use rubrics for more than just projects. You can use them for things like quizzes and tests. So we're used to having to give multiple choice assessments, especially where a lot of state testing, a lot of SAT courses, you still need to know how to answer multiple choice questions. So you want to still use those sort of questions, but then how do you grade it on a 4, 3, 2, 1 scale? So by developing a rubric for these sort of assessments, you can then categorize the grades by that mastering, meeting, approaching, not there yet scale. So I've come up with rubrics for assessments where, if you get this many multiple choice and open response questions correct, you've earned the mastering scale score. If you get this many multiple choice questions right and this many open-ended questions right, you're in the meeting category. So make rubrics for things. It will make grading in this system a whole lot easier. And I believe that by having frequent conversations with students about the differences between mastering, meeting, approaching, and not there yet, you don't need to make this long-winded, detailed rubric. You can have very simple rubrics where these are the standards you're being assessed on, and then I'm just going to put what category you're in, 4, 3, 2, or 1, and then I'm going to provide you detailed feedback. And this is where you will really see students learn from their mistakes, because in that feedback area of your rubric, you're going to tell them this is why you're at a 3 and not a 4, or this is why you're at 2 and not a 3. And you're giving them what they need to do to improve, and then you allow them to make those improvements. So with a project, for example, if a student, did not do X, Y, Z, and you tell them that, they'll take that feedback and are more likely to make those improvements than if you just said, here's your grade, it's a C. They'll see the written feedback, oh, this is why I didn't get a 3. This is what I need to do it. Let me go fix that and let me resubmit it. And the improvement here is that the grades are to help students get better. It's to help students learn. Grades should not be this sentence for students where it's something that they get from teachers. It should be something that they're working, they should see it as feedback to get better. So the overall goal with changing up the grading system is overall to make grades help students get better. So I hope that you'll find these ideas helpful as you are trying to work and improve the grading system to help optimize the success of your students in your classroom. And if you're really ready to take that plunge into standards-based grading, definitely make sure to click on that link below to get that free guidebook if you are ready to set up your standards-based grading system today. Thank you all for watching, and I look forward to talking with you soon.